So Carson Price for Friday, February 28th, 2025. Remember to pay your rent, short month. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio. It really sneaks up on you in February, though. Coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Herberly. Here at the Historic Wall Center, and as always, this show a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today, bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sekeres alongside MLS play-by-play man Blake Price and four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogers and Hidden Switches conducting things. You're off to Denver to call soccer?
Yes. Alas, not doing the Whitecaps. Duty calls.
Mm-hmm. Do you know when your first Caps game is?
Next week.
Ah, brilliant.
Yeah.
The Montreal game?
Yeah.
Ah, good stuff. Goalie on the color?
Yeah.
Ah, great stuff. The band's together. We're 1 week from the National Hockey League trade deadline, and we're going to spend some time on today's show discussing this in the context of the Vancouver Canucks, who lay an egg in Anaheim last night against the Ducks. Thank you, Mike. But we start with our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. How should the Canucks approach the NHL deadline? You can vote buyers. You can vote sellers. You can vote hockey trades. Do so at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. Before I throw to Blake Price, I'm going to bring up his tweet from last night, game over, and get him to answer his own question. Is that the game that made the Canucks sellers at the deadline, Blake?
429 likes on that, 86 replies. Everybody was moved to respond to it. I think they give themselves one more. But the beauty is for this team, they've got this break that we've talked about. We were talking about the break yesterday as it pertains to a chance for Quinn Hughes to get some further rest. It is also meetings time. After the Seattle game, that is also 3 days from which to focus solely on the future of the franchise on the ice. So
not the immediacy of the team as well?
No, near and short and long-term future. All of it. So I think the Kraken game is really it. I mean, if you haven't, by the time the Ducks game on Wednesday has come and gone, I mean, you're 48 hours within the deadline. So yeah. I'll say one more.
I would agree with you if I felt this ownership group would be willing to let its management behave as sellers. I have trouble seeing that. We know how much playoff revenue means to Chairman Francesco Aquilini. He refused to rebuild even when it was plainly obvious that they should rebuild. So I don't see him punting on this season. I voted hockey trades, and I voted hockey trades because I certainly don't think you should be buyers and give up more future assets for rentals and guys who walked. We saw that with Elias Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov.
That doesn't have to be what you're doing when you're buying. Like I would say,
well, that's the traditional buying. I'm not voting sellers because I just don't think Francesco would. Look, I put out a tweet this morning, similar to what I've articulated on the show this week. If they were to behave like a true seller, what? Boeser for a first and a prospect, Suter for a second or a third, Soucy for a second and a third. Maybe that's a little rich, third or fourth. Forbert for what, a fifth? 4 draft picks, a prospect, plus $13 million to redeploy. Like 100 people already have replied to it. But I can't see that. So I voted hockey trades. Also in part because you have a second-line center issue to solve here, not a first-line center issue if Elias doesn't get well. So players with term, and really, that's how they've conducted themselves this year because Marcus Pettersson and O'Connor, while rentals when they were acquired, were immediately re-signed. Victor Mancini and Filip Chytil are multi-year pieces in the Miller trade. Now let's get to Brock Boeser. Because
let me answer the poll question here first of all.
Well, what did you vote?
I'm voting buy, but my definition is different than yours.
My
definition is different than yours. You're not buying anybody that's a rental. Not buying anybody with an
expiring
contract. No UFAs.
Okay.
But that may be in concert with a Brock Boeser trade in order to get assets that you then flip for a centerman that you're buying.
Okay.
So, however you want to define that, it's sort of a bit of gray area there.
Yeah. Frank Saravelli reporting that the Canucks offered Boeser a 5-year deal at $8 million per, so $40 million total. That is way short. That is an offer that they know he's not going to accept and may well speak volumes. That may well be an offer that was tantamount to opening the door and ushering him out.
Yeah.
Again, AFP Analytics projects a 7-year, $9.3 million per deal for Boeser if he hits open market. That's $65 million or just shy of total. The Vancouver offers $40 million total. Now, is that the last best offer? Is there one more coming before next Friday? We know this management group likes to get contracts done by the deadline so that they can future plan. They very much leaned on Elias to get him to the table last year, although it's not looking too wise in the rearview mirror. So, what do you think? Do you think that's last, best, and final, or do you think there's another overture to make here to the longest tenured Canuck?
I think they could get to 6 years at 8.2. Something like that, but I don't think it's going much richer.
So that's like $50 million.
Yeah,
you're just shy of.
Yeah,
I think you probably got to get close to $55 million in total compensation to get Brock back. I could see him leaving something in the order of $5 to $10 million on the table to stay in Vancouver, but he's not leaving like 15 to 20.
No. No,
no one would.
Like no one thought 5 by 8 was going to work.
No. So, I said hockey trades. You said trade pieces to get
assets for a hockey trade.
Okay. Boeser for Casey Mittelstadt. Who says no? Colorado has been very unhappy with Casey Mittelstadt this year. In fact, we're playing Mikko Rantanen at center ice before his trade to the Carolina Hurricanes. Have since acquired centerman Jack Drury, although more a bottom six guy, and Marty Necas, who has played some in the middle, although. Now, normally I could not see a team trading a relatively young centerman with a 59-point season on his belt and who's under contract for 2 more years at $5.75 million for a rental winger. But again, the Avalanche have been upset with Mittelstadt this year, and they may well view getting off the contract as beneficial as well.
Vastly overpaid for what he is right now.
How bad is the season this year?
He's at 33 points or something like that.
Okay. Now, making that deal would leave the Canucks short on scoring off the flanks, much like we saw last year in the postseason and what they tried to address all of last summer. But that would better position the club down the middle going forward.
And of all the weaknesses you want on a team, weakness on the wing is the most acceptable one.
Right.
So you at any moment you can go and get somebody that can help you score from the wing. Acquiring Mittelstadt would be a little bit like what I've talked about. Is that in the absence of finding legitimate first or second line centers, you're getting I've talked about getting another Chytil, and Mittelstadt and Chytil are a little bit different. I'd say Chytil's more mobile than Mittelstadt. Mittelstadt can skate too. But I've said in absence of that, get another Chytil, and then at any given moment, probably one of the guys is going. And that's sort of what that would be if you acquired Mittelstadt.
Flood the position with imperfect yet
capable.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably be okay with that because as much as he's overpaid for what he's currently producing, he has produced at a better clip than that. And at least you know exactly what that price is, and that price is going to seem a little less crazy in a year or two when the Caps jumped up by $10 million. So I would probably be okay with that.
Yeah.
I've said I'm apoplectic, thinking about how the Canucks solve their center problem. So you're going to have to give to get.
Cam Robinson, our friend from Elite Prospect, says the LA Kings, New Jersey Devils, Ottawa Senators are interested in Brock Boeser. One thing is becoming clear, though, and this was predictable during the period earlier this season when we were talking who to trade, Miller or Pettersson. Brock is losing his effectiveness minus JT.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 3 points in the 9 games since the Miller trade. The goals for has cratered from 64% to 34%. I mean, it's nearly cut in half. I thought we had a graphic there, Mike. I'm sorry. That's why I paused. The Canucks scouted the Islanders-Bruins game last night as well as the Sabres-Hurricanes game, and I'm sure they scouted other games as well. It's just those were noted on social media. I thought we had a visual there as well. Did I really screw up today and send
No,
you?
no.
There it is. Oh, okay.
I got this one.
Okay, all right. Next question on this, Blake Price. In the unlikely world where they are selling or retooling, if you will,
mm-hmm.
do you think it would go deeper than the UFAs and Soucy? Like Garland, Bluger, Hoagland? Is there any chance that those
deeper
guys,
than who and Soucy?
The UFAs and Soucy? Your UFAs, of course, are Brock Boeser, Pius Suter, Derek Forbort.
I think they really like. I'm surprised they actually haven't extended Forbort at this point. I think they're worried about the injuries, but
somebody mentioned that. I've been Dollywell said they very well could. Don't be surprised.
I think that's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you quite like what he's still not in the position where he can be asking for a ton of money because he's old and he's been injured. So
and limited.
Yeah,
but he's a big power. He's a big penalty killing defenseman.
Yeah.
And that's a valuable piece in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
So, who's even on the menu for beyond Boeser and the UFAs?
As I mentioned,
Soucy,
Garland.
Oh boy,
Bluger, Hoaglander.
I would normally say yes if any one of those guys was deemed to have a ton of. I think Garland would have some value. But, I mean, Hoaglander doesn't have any
Garland
value.
has value.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question. They probably like Bluger more than the next man, and Hoaglander you're selling at low value.
Bluger didn't even play in the playoffs for Vegas. So, I mean, I would think that I would look at a Garland trade, yes. And, again, not because I have a problem with him on this team, but if you can solve a weakness by trading Connor Garland, by all means.
You're exacerbating the winger weakness, but I hear what you're saying. He had a good year last year. He's having another decent year this year. The daily poll question, a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi, and Surrey Mitsubishi wants to get EP40 back on top. Everyone at the dealership around town getting behind the hometown hero. Every time he scores a point, you save $500 the next day on any new or used vehicle. If he gets 2 points, you can go into Surrey Mitsubishi and ask for that $1,000 off. If he gets 5 points.
Would they?
Well, first of all, we're going to have some show if he gets 5 points.
Yeah.
And you're going to get $2,500 off at Surrey Mitsubishi.
I'm going to guess you have a new car, yeah.
Yeah. There's going to be cars flying off the lot if he gets
Imagine.
Of course, right now he may not get 5 points the rest of the year, but if it happens to come in one game.
I said, can you imagine? And I mean that in so many ways.
stretching the imaginations of British Columbia hockey fans. You got to mention Harrison Price. The offer is valid until the next game day. Time to cheer EP40 back to the top. Score more, save more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit them 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey.
I think some of these winger trades that we're sort of spitballing, like if you traded Boeser, if you trade, again, given where this team is at, why wouldn't you sweeten that trade and try to get your center that way? Like people are saying, no, they're not going. Yeah. No one's going to trade like a good center. They might if you overpay a little bit for a guy with term.
I think you're going to have to overpay to get a top two center because really that's the only time that you can acquire one via trade.
And if it's a guy with term, I'm okay with an overpayment there.
Well, because teams don't trade top two centers unless you blow their socks off.
Right.
Because they know how difficult it is to find and replace those guys. So you either need a team that has a built-in ready replacement for one of their top two centers, or you build the guy who's on the upswing that you think is going to be there.
Man, I'm willing to go now.
And centers are more valuable than wingers, so you're going to have to add plus.
If you're telling me that Garland and Wielander would get you a center, I would do it.
Yep.
I would do it.
Our top story brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, a 5-2 loss at Anaheim. The second straight night they blow a 2-0 lead, only this time it costs them the full 2 points. Now, it doesn't cost them their playoff standing. They sit there in the second wild card above the bar because Calgary lost in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
But they are bringing Anaheim and Utah, winners of 3 straight, including last night against Minnesota, back into the pack. The Utah Hockey Club 2 back of Vancouver, having played an additional game. Anaheim is 6 back, but with a game in hand and 2 more head-to-heads against Vancouver, including Wednesday at Rogers Arena.
Ridiculous to say. Why we're talking about the Ducks,
who may well sell by next Friday anyways. We'll see. A lot of talk about John Gibson, their goaltender. Are they finally going to move Trevor Zegras? His name has been out there for an awfully long time.
Too bad we couldn't scout him last night because he was suspended.
Yeah, they have some other UFAs on that team as well, including defenseman Brian Dumoulin and forward Robbie Fabry. So we'll see what Anaheim is up to here. They may be sellers. They have been a rebuilding club for some time. Coach was pretty upset last night. So let's hear from Rick Tocchet as he outlines what went wrong, including an abandonment of the game plan and a failure to apply the teaching lessons, even from that intermission. I coached them in the intermission, and they're screwing it up minutes later. Take a listen.
Well, we had a game plan. They're a rush team. Got the 2-0 lead, and we had a 2-on-1. We didn't connect. I think we had a breakaway. A couple of missed opportunities, and then all of a sudden they had a rush game. And then we decided to forever abandon the game plan. And we need some guys to rise to the occasion. Whether that's a middle drive or go to the net. Like, we had shots on net with nobody going to net. So a little disappointed in the grit part of our game.
So it was an execution thing more than anything with the game plan, not following.
Well, execution is how many times where I think Hughes had a couple opportunities. He shot the puck. We have guys standing on the side of the net. Like, that doesn't win hockey. Just a little bit disappointed in the team. I think we went a little. We kind of gave in.
I almost thought for a second there he was going to say execution. I'm all for it. Line them up.
That would have been good.
The old football coach, John McCain. Coach, what did you think of the execution of your team? I'm all for it. I coached the expansion Tampa Bay.
Could you make that joke now, or people would be take it too seriously?
You can make that joke.
No.
But your sense of humor is often a little bit, oh, that's too much.
Me?
Yeah, oh, yeah. You're kind of prudish.
No.
Yeah. No, you are.
I would make
I'm
that
telling
joke.
you.
It's fine for him to say what he said.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of
we kind of gave in. Ooh, I mean,
but to me, like,
disappointed in the lack of grit. We showed them how to defend this rush in the second intermission. They scored in the third period on that rush with our guys not defending it as we taught. He's used that a lot. You got to apply. We've got coaches here who are frustrated. They're teaching you. They should be improving you. All you have to do is take the information and apply.
A guy's personality is a guy's personality, so maybe this isn't in Tocchet, but I would have blistered them. Like, the words were kind of strong-ish, but I would have been fed up if I was him last night. Like, really fed up.
In part, and Jeff has the tweet, and I'm sorry, Mike, this is out of sequence. Jeff had the tweet. Where is it now? Yeah. 4 tight games since the Four Nations break, right? Those are all close games in the third period.
Yeah.
Canucks do not have a third period goal. Have been outscored 5-0 in third periods. Got an overtime winner after a penalty kill when it was 4-on-4. But otherwise, games that are there for the taking, and the Canucks have managed 1 win in 4. And frankly, a lot of that has to do with the $11.6 million nothing right now.
I was going to say,
you pay guys that much to be difference makers in close games like this, and he's not only not responding, he's not even being trusted to be one of the players out there seeking that game-tying that go-ahead goal.
And we're beyond the point now of inconsistency.
Oh, way beyond the point of that.
Because
he has been consistently bad for a year.
I was looking at it because if I could ask you, name a star player that has fallen off a cliff in the last few years, a guy that was a bit of a punchline. Who springs to mind? Anybody?
We talking just hockey?
Hockey, yeah. An 80 to 100 point guy who dropped off.
Jeff Skinner's fallen off the table this year. We all thought he would be a good mix in Edmonton as a winger.
More elite player than that.
Yeah, okay.
Jonathan Huberdeau.
Yeah, okay. At one point, Dion Phaneuf. You remember, like, his first few years, people thought Dion Phaneuf was going to be the next Chris Pronger and then the defensive voice.
Different metric, though, being a defenseman.
Yeah,
so my mind went to Huberdeau, and I was just trying to think, okay, like, it feels like he was really bad really quick. What was that? So I went back and looked. The drop-off, he had a 115-point season with the Florida Panthers. I'm going to say that again. He had 115 points with the Florida Panthers. His next 2 full seasons, 22-23 and 23-24, were seasons of 55 and 52 points. Half. Cut in half. Do you know what kind of pace Elias Pettersson would have to get on? What change in pace to get to 55 points this season? Be almost a point per game the rest of the way. Do you see that as possible? So we are talking about a season that will now most decidedly be worse than Jonathan Huberdeau's seasons, in which he became the punchline of the league. And by the way, Huberdeau, 43 points in just 58 games this season. He's going to comfortably get past 55 points this year, you would think. So he's found a little bit more of his game this year, and he's got 22 goals to boot. So he has come back to the field a little bit. But if you ever made a joke online or otherwise with a buddy about Jonathan Huberdeau's drop-off, guess what? This is worse.
And you have made several.
Yes.
Over the years.
Yeah.
Tyler Myers with a goal and an assist, as Dave of Earth tweeted, a Tyler Myers hat trick, a goal, an assist, and a dumb penalty. What a slap shot, though, huh? Out of the box, down there.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Fun goal.
Yeah.
And should be noted, Myers was there answering the questions after a loss yet again. Pius Suter with a goal and was quite dangerous. Connor Garland, an assist, building off his 2-goal effort against the Kings. Boeser with a point and assist in what could be his final game as a Canuck. If he makes it to Wednesday, I would suspect he's in for a large ovation, a huge ovation at Rogers Arena. The smart hockey fans here, they will understand there's a chance that Brock could be on his way out if no extension is signed by the time the Canucks play their final game before the deadline. That's Wednesday, the home game against Anaheim. Now, Pius Suter, good game, you could say, boosted his trade value, and I think would be a pretty valuable rental. We're talking about a guy who's on pace for 20 goals. We're talking about a guy who's a primary penalty killer for the Vancouver Canucks. Terrific versatility there. Can play center or the wing, can play with skill, can play in more of a checking role. The problem is if you're trading Pius Suter, given the state of center ice right now, that's like running the white flag up.
Is it? I mean, I agree with everything you said up to that point. Like,
so let's say you get a second-round pick for Pius Suter.
Yeah, you're mildly worse. Yeah.
So your centers now are Elias Pettersson, Teddy Bluger in the 2-hole.
No, Philip Hedl.
Oh, sorry, Hedl, Bluger in the 3-hole, Ratu in the 4-hole.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
I'd actually go Ratu in the 3-hole, Bluger in the 4, but
okay. Dollywell says the sides are talking. It's going to take $3 million plus. Do me a favor, actually. I forgot to ask you this. What is AFP saying about Pius Suter's extension? But you remember he lasted till late in the summer. Was a little disappointed a couple of years ago in free agency that the offers weren't better for a guy who had been a third-line center with pretty consistent offensive totals. Effectively got fed up. Bet on himself on a 2-year deal with the Canucks paying $1.5 million. So he's in line for a raise, and with the cap going up, I think he's going to get. In fact, I think he's going to more than double his salary. Do you have that there?
I don't have it immediately. Okay. I'll get it, though.
All right. So he's one of the UFAs. Artur Shilov's beaten 4 times after showing some good signs early, building off that good weekend start, but Vancouver makes the Anaheim Ducks look like the Soviet Red Army with all the rush chances. I mean, that was incredible. The number, like the guts of the ice, as Tocchet would say, not protected in the least. It was one high danger rush chance after another high danger rush chance. Now, I think he needs to stop either the Vatrano or the Gauthier goals, high glove. And probably the same on the Strome and Lacombe goals, blocker side. Although so much time and space for some of those goals. Such bad coverage, like picking up the transitions in coverage. Now, I don't think PJ had a rather dire forecast for Shilov's yesterday on the show. Basically called him a quad A goaltender, or at least said
it's at
the
risk.
Vancouver Canucks are well within the rights to consider him a quad. I should have challenged him a little more. Number one, because I love disagreeing with Patrick, but also because it's a little premature.
He's still pretty young
for me. Yeah. But here's the one thing. If you were thinking that the Kevin Lankinen extension makes Thatcher Demko expendable, you're a lot more secure in that view and in moving Thatcher Demko if Artur Shilov's is an NHL backup.
Yeah. Even if he's 500 this season, if he's 3-3-2 this season, instead of 1 win and 8.
But Shilov's needs to be better than that if you're thinking we're going forward with Lankinen and Shilov's and we're trading Demko for a different piece. And incidentally, Thatcher has been on the ice. They're still targeting a return next week.
I just didn't like the way he behaved in the net too. Like, it's not like he's in position and it's squeaking through him. I could almost have more time for that.
The Vatrano goal was that, I think. That was a great shot in the corner.
But there was openings there. Like, he seems
there's a lot of openings.
He seems small in net. Like they were picking the corners. They saw the daylight and went and shot at it.
Yeah, there's lots of daylight.
Pius Suter 4x4.
Okay.
It was just too rich. You can't.
No, I'm not doing that on Suter.
No.
But that brings you into the same realm of discussion as Boeser, right? You're not doing 7 and 9 for Boeser.
No. But with Suter, at least, you think they got this guy in mid-August. So if you believe in your scouting crew, like, guys like this are around. Mm-hmm. And Pius Suter's been totally fine.
Yep.
But again, he's a mid-teen scorer. Has always been, is right now.
Could get to 20, but yes.
Yeah, we'll see.
Oh, he's got 14.
15.
14, 15, yeah. We have got to talk about Elias Pettersson. So one night after he plays sparingly, 2 shifts in the final 6 and change in the third period at Crypto against the Kings, and not at all in overtime, he's basically used like a shutdown 3C.
Mm-hmm.
He played 17:04, that trailed Hedel. He played just 9 seconds more than Pius Suter. And according to Natural Stat Trick, Pettersson and DeBrusk, 0 offensive zone starts at evens.
Flattering to his defensive play, but it tells you how dangerous he thinks, Tocchet thinks that the guys will be offensively.
No, but why are you saddling DeBrusk with that?
Yeah, totally.
He had 2 goals on the weekend.
It's a waste of DeBrusk.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that, move DeBrusk off the line.
Yeah. Yeah, give DeBrusk to Hedel.
I can understand. Yeah. What did Gilman tell us Wednesday? I mean, you're going to trade every player you're mad at. You're going to trade yourself into a really bad team.
Yeah.
And the same sort of goes for coaching. If you're going to demote, bench, or limit the opportunity of guys you're mad at, well, make sure you're specific. Make sure you're going to that tool judiciously. Don't go scattershot. DeBrusk is your best goal scorer. Or second, if you consider that to be Boeser.
See, and to dovetail this back, because Pettersson, they're so anchored with that contract. But you can add him into this mix. Pettersson now, Boeser and Suter, 2 of the question marks you just handed to me. Who's a good skater there? Nobody. And that is the problem with this forward set. All of a sudden,
O'Connor and Hedel look like
they look like blue totally absolute streaks.
Yeah.
And so now that you've already saddled yourself with a non-skater and Pettersson for infinity and beyond, you got to be really careful about re-signing Suter and Boeser, who are not fast now and are getting older.
They've been slow forever.
Yeah.
Like too fucking slow.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
I can remember one year calling Trevor Linden, I want to say it was in the summer, but it might have been before the deadline. And there was a reasonable player available. I'm forgetting who it was. And I said, Trevor, so-and-so's your team's been named in connection with this player. And he's like, no, we're already slow enough. Like that was 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
That's when Bo was slow. Bo, I would take in a million years right now.
Again, if Hedel and O'Connor are Usain Bolt, Bo's Andre DeGrasse.
Yeah.
And how depressing is it getting for Elias Pettersson? This from Ricky, an account I recognize. Ilya Mikheyev has now tied him in goals with 11. They paid to get rid of Ilya Mikheyev, you may remember.
And Mike, what did you have? Since New Year's, Matt Rempe's got as many goals as...
He's tied with Matt Rempe. No, he has less than Matt Rempe this year, 2025.
That's not a guy you want to be in lockstep with for goal scoring.
I want to be in lockstep with a yellow dog this weekend. The sooner the better, as a matter of fact. It's a nice sunny day. I may sit in the sun, go hit some golf balls, and sit in the sun with the yellow dog. How does that sound?
If you had asked me what this season has felt like for this hockey team, I'd say wild. Wild. It's also the name of a fabulous beer.
It's felt like how we feel after going out with Mike and John in Penticton.
Which is also wild.
At Neighborhood. It's a really, really great night. Love the nights with our friends from Neighborhood and Yellow Dog. The next mornings, not so much.
Neighborhood's got the Wild Wild Extra Pale Ale in collaboration with New Country Radio there in the interior. Crisp hoppy and crushable. Brew for all you Wranglers out there. Perfect to share with your wild amigos. Yeehaw. Wild. Wild.
Chris Johnson is reporting that Mikko Rantanen's camp is expected to let the Carolina Hurricanes know in the next few days where things stand on a contract extension.
Mm-hmm.
You may have noticed, and it is quite odd, and I saw that Pierre LeBrun had to go back a couple of times and explained this yesterday on social. But, hold on. We have some listener fans here in the lobby who want a photo. There you go. Hi. Thumbs up. Okay. Pierre LeBrun has had to explain himself that, look, I'm not saying he is going to be traded or they want to trade him. It's very odd to see a player acquired like this and then flipped, although we heard a little bit of that with Zadorov last year, if you remember. Carolina is an analytics-based franchise. Carolina is run a little bit differently than your average Bear. And in fact, until last year with Jay Gensel, Carolina was very coolish on rentals to begin with. So Eric Tulsky and the Hurricanes acquired Mikko Rantanen from Colorado with the express purpose of re-signing Rantanen. And they are learning what Joe Sakic, Chris McFarland, the Avalanche crew are learning, and that is he is a difficult guy to pin down. And, of course, he hasn't played his best hockey since moving over. The trade was quite a shock to him.
Better last night.
Yeah, he was. Of course, you're no longer playing with Nate McKinnon and Cale Makar. And so this has others believing, this has people around the league believing that if Mikko is not going to re-sign, if he doesn't want to re-sign in Carolina, if he's not willing to negotiate now, or if he wants too much money, and all three of those things could possibly be the case, that Carolina's going to turn around and flip him by next Friday. After paying Marty Necas, Jack Drury, and 2 picks, a second and a fourth, to acquire him. I guess Taylor Hall was involved there as well.
I think they're going to have to do it right at the last close to the last second.
Well, that's it. Like that could be the showdown at the OK Corral.
Yeah.
Right down to high noon for us on Friday.
And I'd just be curious what the price is, because when you get to the 11th hour, you're not really in the position to be bargaining.
No.
But
it's a central registry.
But I mean, ultimately, the consequence for them. What's the consequence for them? They gave up Marty Necas. Yeah, that's a pretty big consequence.
And Drury, who's a cheaper young centerman, and second and fourth round picks. At that point, you better win a cup if you're Carolina.
Yeah.
Can we set one thing straight, though? Because I've seen this on Canucks Twitter. Elias Pettersson for Mikko Rantanen is nonsensical. If you trade Elias Pettersson for Mikko Rantanen, first of all, would it just be for 20 games plus the playoffs if you make the playoffs?
You have to have permission to talk first.
No, but Blake, even if you re-sign him, who's getting him the puck?
Do you refashion?
So you're going to be destitute at center to pay Mikko Rantanen $13 million a year, please. That's even more than Pettersson.
Do you refashion him as a center?
Well, Colorado tried that a little bit. If you think he can play center, sure enough, but that's...
He's had seasons where he's played full center, like even last year. He took 511 faceoffs. He played him down the middle, fair amount. Year before that, 453 faceoffs. He's a better than 50% faceoff guy.
Well, faceoffs is one thing, right?
Yep, vision,
playmaking, defensive responsibility. Yeah. Not to mention, and Frank Corrado joined us this week and said, the way that Carolina plays and how Brind'Amour plays, he couldn't see a worse fit there than Elias Pettersson.
Right.
I can understand the front office, vulturing around Elias last year at this time before the deadline. I can even understand the front office, inquiring about a buy low candidate earlier this year when Vancouver was talking to them about, the Rantanen deal, as it turned out, right? People were saying, the Canucks were in on Necas, Drury, or some combination thereof, picks for Pettersson. But, Elias continues to crater here. Lastly, Carson Soucy, and conflicting info here. Cam Robinson says the agent is working to find a trade fit, and that the Canucks sent a memo to 31 other teams saying he's available. Dollywall says Soucy doesn't want to move. He does have a no trade. I'm sure that's the agent leaning on Rick and getting his talking points through as per usual. Because Yeah, that's how the game works, right? You get the no trade. If your team comes to you and says, well, we'd like to trade you, the agent goes, well, first of all, you're trying to renegotiate the contract, and secondly, no, my guy doesn't want to move. And that way you broker a trade that the player might be willing to accept, as opposed to giving the club any kind of delusions that you're going to play ball.
I mean, it's valuable cap space for the Canucks next season, a season in which, Matt, I mean, could you have bottom four pairs of Pettersson, Vilander, DPD, Myers? I mean, that's pretty cheap D then.
There is still a school of thought that if you are playing for the playoffs this year and think you can do something, why move Carson Soucy? Because A, he was pretty good in the playoffs last year against some excellent players in Edmonton, but also he provides depth for you. The other school of thought is you don't need him right now. The emergence of Elias Pettersson Jr., not to mention the acquisition of Victor Mancini, and as you say, the arrival of Tom Wielander at some point, that you've got limited minutes available on defense for the acquisition of Marcus Pettersson as well, right? Lest we forget that you have limited minutes available for a guy making $3.25 and who hasn't had a good year.
Well, and next year, I mean, again, cap space is going to come in handy, and if you can have three cheap guys, Mancini, Wielander, and DPD all in the lineup. Not in the lineup, but on the roster.
Yeah, with the three existing expensive guys, Hughes, Pettersson, Roenick, not to mention.
And then a middle-priced Tyler Myers, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that seems like to me, that's a worthwhile risk.
That is very worthwhile. I would be absolutely A-okay with that group coming back next year. Maybe if Forbert-style
as another
further
stopper.
insurance.
Yes,
absolutely.
yeah.
Our friends at the Daily Faceoff, they got you covered for trade deadline day 1 week from today, everybody, March 7th from 8 a.m. onwards. Join DFO Live for all the happenings on trade deadline day. Then you're going to tune in to us at noon Pacific, and then later that night you got J-Pat and the RinkWide crew following Vancouver's game against Minnesota. It's all 1 week from today. Looking forward to it. And, of course, as we get in the menu by Greta, should something break, we'll be here with an emergency show. Got J-Pat on notice already. Blake may have to do it from a Denver hotel room this weekend.
It's possible.
But, hey, it's a Friday. Miller and Pettersson trades, remember? It's on a Friday.
They love Friday trades.
They love those Friday night news drops.
It's like they don't want us to analyze them for a couple of days. They want us to sit and stew on them.
Maybe no, I don't think it's that. I would like to think it's just organic and coincidental. But there have been paranoid institutions, officials over the years that have very calculatingly chosen Friday afternoons, Fridays. But in today's media landscape, that's kind of an
media's omnipresent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Greta, great spot. All the games, home and away, steps from the arena, stadium, pregame, postgame. The street food menu is amazing. We talked about it yesterday. The games in the arcade, tons of fun. Weekly drink specials. It's the place to be. 50 West Cordova. Greta, let the games begin. We got Jeff Marek coming up, and then Jeff Paterson. Marek more on trade deadline franchise big picture. Jeff, we get in the game a little bit before moving on to what's to come here with the Vancouver Canucks. All right. Time now for our Bet365 best bets. I had bets of the day. I had Elias scoring a goal and going for 2 points. So not so much.
I think I had the over. Got burned there.
No.
Game
went over.
That went hit.
Game went over. Mike, does he ever remember a bet? Like Mike's in there just smiling because he's like, oh, yeah, we're going to do this thing again.
And the wins.
Yeah, exactly. We're 24 hours later. Blake has no clue what he selected, even when it wins, as you say.
I'm
Mike.
going off the menu here, not off the Bet365 menu.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely staying on that menu. Off the regular menu, if you will. Because Canada has a chance maybe to have two men in separate ATP finals this weekend.
This could be a big weekend for Canadian tennis.
Denis Shapovalov's in a semi tonight. I'm not going to focus on that one. He's the overwhelming favorite in that one. That's why I say that we could have two men in the final. But you're getting good underdog money for a red-hot Felix Auger-Aliassime in his final tomorrow morning against our favorite tennis name to say on the show, Stefano Tsitsipas. And Auger-Aliassime already has 2 titles this season.
Apologies to all Greeks out there for butchering his name, especially you great Greeks in Greek town, Kitsilano.
Felix is the dog here on the money line at plus 120. I would like that a little bit bigger, but it's still dog money.
And a couple of things.
And he's the one that's got all the momentum.
Tsitsipas is down to 11th in the world. He's 3-4 this year. Felix is 12-4.
Yeah.
And then on Shapo, he won a tournament a few weeks ago, beating 3 top 10 players. It was the first time in like 6 years that somebody had done that on tour.
He's the odds-on guy to win this tournament now because the other 3 guys that are alive right now, they don't have his pedigree. So Shapo should win the Acapulco.
Oh, Acapulco. I'm going Sunday at BC Place. The LA Galaxy are the reigning MLS champions. They're here, but Blake tells me they've been absolutely decimated by personnel losses and injuries. So much so that like the inside MLS folks think there's a world where like this team could miss the playoffs.
Yep.
Finish towards the bottom of the Western table 1 year after lifting a trophy. So the Caps are actually strong favorites in this game at even money. It's plus 250 to win it on the Galaxy. Odd seeing that beside an LA team in MLS. The tie's going off at plus 280. I mean, I think you could do worse than betting a Caps win or a Caps tie here.
They need to reestablish home dominance here this season after a very poor home record last year. So they are going to be ready to go. They're going to win.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Jeff Merrick coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
When you think 100% electric vehicles, who do you think these days? No, don't. The other T word, Toyota. They're the first on the block. They've been doing it far longer than anybody else. And you know what? Those OG electric vehicles, many of them still on the road, going back years and years. And Toyota's got a new one in the lineup, the BZ4X. Go take one for a test drive. Fits in the West Coast sized parking lot stalls, yet more than enough cargo space for multiple sets of golf clubs and anything else you want to stuff in it as well. And even Matt fits in the front seat.
It's fair.
100% electric, HOV lane compliant.
Plus, no Canadian is buying that guy's cars at this stage of the game, right?
Buy the T word that matters. Toyota. Great incentives right now, too. $6,500 in rebates and incentives at your local Pacific Toyota dealer. Go pay them a visit. Take one for a test drive. 3.29% financing, APR for 36 months. Shop Toyota.ca. And enter the contest. You could get tickets to the Canuck Minolta Champions Club at Rogers Arena for April 6th, Canucks and Golden Knights, and you'll get 2 jerseys on your back as well. Visit them on Instagram and Facebook at Toyota Pacific for your chance to enter.
The Sheet with Jeff Marek goes at noon Pacific time, so you watch him and then catch up with us, or you watch us and then you catch up with him. And he joins us typically on Fridays, although the last time we talked to him was on the eve of Canada-USA. I told you we were going to win. Have no fear. Sydney doesn't let us lose those games.
Or Connor doesn't let us lose those games. Or Marner doesn't let us. Or Jordan Binnington doesn't let us lose those games.
That's right.
Yeah, here we are 7 days later, 8 days later, actually, and we're talking about still the Four Nations. I mean, the cast, I'll tell you what, like, I know we'll hop on Vancouver here and that, the disappointment that was last night against Anaheim. But I wonder how far the cascade is going to go here coming off of that. It's essentially tournament where, you play 4 games. Like, that's it. Like, it was 4 games, but didn't it feel like an entire season's worth of drama and like,
oh my gosh,
we're pulling everything. Like, what is this going to mean for the future of Jordan Binnington? It's 4 games. Like, mind you, it's 4 high pressure games, and now also, like, all of a sudden there's the newfound hatred that pretty much every market outside of the ones that they're in have for the Canuck brothers, which is fantastic. Like, all of a sudden there's something for the NHL to legitimately hang their hat on and say, you know what, last year when we said, no soap operas and no drama, scrub that. We've got the Canucks and we want them front and center. Thank you very much.
4 games too, in which guys got tenderized so badly that like, they're missing games. Like, Canucks missed games, both of them.
Well, Canada made them play too hard. You understand? The Canadians made them play too hard, and now they can't go back to the.
And maybe Connor McDavid should miss some games.
It's not just the NHL players getting tenderized; it's the emotional drain on us fans, Jeff.
Yes,
I'm not sure I can. Next year, I have to sweat through a quarterfinal as well and a semifinal. Oh my God!
You know what it's reminded
I'm ready
us?
for that emotion.
You know what's interesting too, Maddie and Blake. I'll tell you. This one had its own life on social media, as we all know. And as much as this was a sort of a primer for the Olympics for the players, I think for the fans as well, because now we have a year to work on our chirps and our trolls. Like, we got to make sure that we all have our games tight, just like players have their games tight. You don't want to be caught not being able to fire one off at a moment's notice. So we've got a year now to work on our trolls and our snipe backs here. We need to get in game shape, folks.
Jeff, I attend Jason Seattle every year, and we are fond of. We have health care. Clap, 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 clap. Anyways.
That's a good one.
We'll see in Italy. We'll bring all this conversation back up next year in Milano Cortina. Okay. So you watch a game like that for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
Where you blow another 2-0 lead, lose going away, as it turns out. And Tocchet says, we abandoned the game plan. I'm disappointed in the lack of grit and, quote, we kinda gave in.
Yeah.
What does a game or a performance like that do in terms of setting you up for the final week before trade deadline?
What is it? 3 games before trade deadline here for the Vancouver Canucks. I still is it 2? Okay, I apologize. 2 games until trade deadline for Vancouver, and I still have a hard, because one of the questions, what's Vancouver going to do? Take the step backwards, go forward? Like, I still have a hard time with the idea of the Vancouver Canucks, taking, I know everything's a bunny hop here, but even taking a slight move backwards when you consider this has to be full court press on let's impress Quinn Hughes and let's give Quinn Hughes a reason to stay. This is Operation Keep Hughes, and also ticket prices going up once again in Vancouver. It's going to be a tough sell if we're taking a step back here, but the prices are going up. So I still think that this is a team that looks at themselves and says, like, look, we have a shot at the playoffs. I know that, Calgary may hit a speed wobble here, but, St. Louis and Utah are right in that conversation now. They both won 3 games in a row, and it's going to be anything but easy. No one's handing them that spot. I just don't see the Vancouver Canucks throwing in the towel or taking a step back. Not when, the mission is keep Quinn Hughes in the mix.
Well, the owner was.
Oh, and by the way, sorry, can I just jump on one more thing? Mm-hmm. You guys are there for all the games. I haven't seen all of the games, but is that the best period you've seen Tyler Myers play this season?
He's his last 2 years have been pretty good.
Yeah, he struggled early in the season, but he got it back together.
Yeah.
And when he's appropriately slotted, he's fine. To your point, I mean, the owner didn't want to rebuild when they were dreadful, like bottom 5 team in the league. He was still trying to retool. So no, I think you're quite wise, and particularly citing Operation Keep Quinn and ticket prices. Plus this owner's history that they are going to either make hockey trades or at least not be full-on sellers. I allow for a narrow channel where Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin can go to him and say, look, Francesco, let's sell off Boeser, Suter, Soucy, Forbert, collect some assets, and we're going to go try and land a big piece in the summer. I give that there's a narrow channel there. I give it a small percentage chance.
The only I don't disagree, but at the same time I do wonder, when you're this close to a playoff spot, it's tough to go to your owner and say we're throwing in the towel.
Yep.
Essentially, we're throwing money out the window. So that would be one of the caveats there, certainly.
They just don't like to miss the playoffs at the best of times. And when you're in a playoff spot on deadline day, which is very plausible for the Vancouver Canucks at this point, you're right, they won't. But I just don't see a path. Like, a lot of the times we sit in our chairs here as media members and just go, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? And it seems so simple to us. I'll be honest. Like, I don't see the path for them getting better. Like, outside of them just finding their game miraculously, and periodically that happens, but with this particular, it's not a great looking forward set anymore. There's not a lot. Them at their highest level is still not that good. I don't know what they're supposed to do at this point, this team, given their assets.
So much of it is going to revolve around the big topic in Vancouver, obviously, and that's Elias Pettersson, who, by the way, was I right about this? Did I see that he had 0 offensive zone starts last night against the Anaheim Ducks?
Yeah, that's what Adam Kirstenblatt of the Hockey News had. Yep.
Okay, so it's zero offensive zone starts for Elias Pettersson and Jake DeBrusk last night. That is more than a little bit surprising, and yes, kind of shaking your head and wondering about the comments that Rick Tocchet made after the game about the grit and the compete and all these types of things that we're used to hearing. And then you say to yourself, well, give Elias Pettersson a chance here. I know that he's getting outshot every night by everybody's blue liner on the opposite team, but not that this team is completely going to come and go with Elias Pettersson, but you got to find some way to put this guy in a situation where he's gonna have a chance to do something, and having him start in the neutral zone or the defensive zone is not that thing. I mean, maybe just from here to the end of the season, as long as he's healthy enough to play, just spoon feed him offensive zone starts over and over and over and over again. I don't know. I've never coached a day in my life, and I know that I'm talking from the back seat and don't have a hand on the wheel and insert cliche X here, but this one kind of seems like a natural to me. Just feed him offensive zone starts. You're going to need him. If you're going to do anything, you're going to need Pettersson to do something.
And this comes after a game, Jeff, where he played just 2 shifts in the final 6 and change in the third against LA and didn't touch the ice in overtime. So, no.
The other one is you can't, Lankinen, love him. Sheloffs, I don't know that it's there at the NHL right now for him.
No.
And
and he played well on the weekend too,
and that's being generous. But a couple of those clear shots, the Gauthier goal, he's got to have the Strome goal. He's got to have there's a couple that you just can't let in. And then you talk about cascade. Look up and down the bench when those goals go in.
Yeah, well, and as we said earlier, great shot Vetrano, but you either got to get the Vetrano or the Gauthier one. You either got to get the Strome or the Lacombe one, right? Make 2 of those saves, and your team's going overtime, and you're getting a point.
But when there's a Saran wrap on 2 goals, that's an issue as well. You look at the Vegas game last night. They didn't play their best, obviously, because they gave up 5 goals to Chicago, but they scored 7. So, and I'm not saying the Canucks are ever going to score 7 goals. That's a month's worth of goals for them. But you can get to 4 yourself kind of regularly. That's not a crazy thing in today's NHL. But the Vancouver Canucks can't get to 4 goals ever.
More than 3 once in the last 20 games, I think. Now.
Yeah, now 20.
That's why, and then that's why you wonder about, a player like Rickard Rakell come trade deadline time. We know how this Vancouver management loves to shop in Pittsburgh. Not that Kyle Dubas has to let go of Rickard Rakell. He still has term. There's no real pressure there, but you do wonder if you're going for it and you say to yourself, we need goals. I mean, Rakell's having himself a real nice season in Pittsburgh, and I that'd be one of the players that I would wonder about here.
Of all the centers that are available, because that's the biggest key, because you could make the argument that if there was somebody actually setting up these wingers, that like Boeser and DeBrusk have been relatively quiet here. If there's a playmaking center, maybe. Like, is there anybody that will be, and there's not going to be any screaming deals, but who's the best bang for the buck center that you can think of that's available? Because a lot of these guys are older guys with not a lot of foot speed, known more for grit. Like Nelson's a goal scorer more than a setup guy, and I don't know if Braden Schen's setting people up at the same rate he used to. Like, who's? I don't know
the Braden Shen. Like, when you consider how St. Louis is playing.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any guarantees. Like, once upon a time, we'd look at this and go like, oh yeah, they're gonna move Shen and Parayko's gonna be gone. Is it gonna be Hofer's time? And I think that Doug Armstrong is like, look, we got a shot at the playoffs here. Vancouver's roller skating down a gravel road. Here comes the Calgary Flames. We expect them to sort of, pardon the pun, but flame out at a certain point. What do you have in Utah? You don't know. Maybe the road clears here for the St. Louis Blues. So as much as we want to say like, yeah, Braden Shen could be a guy for someone, if you're Doug Armstrong and all of a sudden this team is hot and you've just won 3 games in a row and you're looking good and the goalie's rejuvenated coming off of the 4 Nations, and you're St. Louis Blues, you're saying like, no way. The one team that I keep coming back to here, and again, so much of it is based on price, but I don't think that there are, and again, so much of it is based on price, and prices will be high for some of these players. I don't think there's any untouchables in Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
None. No untouchables whatsoever. Some prices are extremely high. Some prices could be extremely low. Some players you might just want to get rid of. But if I'm any team out, then they're a great, like Buffalo is that one team that you look at least I do anyhow. I look at them and say, there are so many pieces I really like here. There are so many players I really like. I just don't like all these guys together.
Right.
But individually, I really, really like them. Like, did not get that feeling from the Buffalo Sabres. And again, like we all know what the consequences are for the Buffalo Sabres at the end of the season. But I don't think there are any untouchables there. There are some that are going to be more difficult. Like J.J. Peterka is a favorite of Terry Pegula, much like Zemgus Girgensons was previous. But I still think that if you're a team that's wanting to go, big game hunting, want to make a splash, I think Kevin Adams is very much open for business. Now, it might just be a situation where they move Jason Zucker and that's it. Might be. But if you're willing to pay the price, I think Buffalo's open for just about anything.
See, I would have thought Canucks have been attached to Zucker in the past. I would have thought Zucker over Rakell.
Could be.
But maybe they're done in the rental business, lower. Right? Maybe
price
they're done. Yeah, exactly. So Saravelli reports they've made a 5x8 offer to Boeser for $40 total million, which is, I mean, there's just no way. Like AFP Analytics thinks he's a 7x9.3 guy, so like that's almost $65 million total. I don't think there's any way that Brock is going to settle for $40 million, no matter how much he loves Vancouver. I mean, it's almost an offer that they know is going to be rejected. It's almost an offer that shows the player the door. But so what do you think? Are they going to keep him as their quote-unquote own rental? Do you think there'll be a last gasp? I mean, things do change quickly with the Canucks. Lankinen and other contract matters resolved, in a day sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or do you think they're going to be inclined to trade here? Like, could you get Mittelstadt for Boeser right now with how down Colorado is on him? What do you think they're doing with Boeser?
This is all going to be done in concert with the owner. I mean, how important are playoffs to the owner? And if they're important, like I do, and with the salary cap going up and a pretty vibrant free agent class this offseason for forwards, I would look at this and say, like, maybe the management just looks at it and says, you know what, that's fine. At the end of it, Boeser wants to leave Minnesota, New Jersey, wherever. we can take that money and we can fill that spot. We can take that dough and we can bring someone else in here. But again, too, like so much of it is based on like, what's the return? What are you getting back from any of these teams? And I don't think that Vancouver, if they're going to make a move for Boeser, I don't think they want green bananas coming back. I think they want players. They want guys that are here now, right? No picks and prospects. Again, Operation QH. But my thought on this one is they keep them. They keep him and they ride it out to the end of the summer, at the end of the season, trying to make the playoffs,
risking that they may come away empty-handed in the hole.
Yep. But again, like if this is the race, if this is the race to the playoffs, if that's what this is, and that's the word from up on high, like a team like the Calgary Flames, for example. Like one of the things that we wonder about, could the Calgary Flames be this year's edition of the Philadelphia Flyers, which essentially was no, last minute, yes, we are going to move all of these players, right? There was the like, oh my goodness, the Philadelphia Flyers are going to make the playoffs. What a job John Tortorella's done. Man, this is the quickest rebuild we've ever seen. And it was no, we're not going to trade, and then they finally did. Is Calgary going to be that team? I don't think Vancouver is, but does that open a door then for Vancouver to jump into? That's what I wonder about.
Yeah. Since we last talked to you, Kevin Lankinen has signed an extension. What do you see here by way of, your thoughts on the deal, but also what do you think that means for the future of Thatcher Demko in Vancouver?
It's insurance. Always good to have insurance, especially at the most important position on the ice. I don't know that Kevin Lankinen is a 65 game a year type goaltender. He's probably a 45 to 50 at best goaltender. So much of this is going to depend on Thatcher Demko. Obviously, if he can get and keep the hospital bracelet off, you have a really good tandem. If not, you have a really good goaltender for 50 games of the season. And then you look for your new battery. But I do like it. He's come in and distinguished himself in a really challenging season for the Vancouver Canucks. Like you would hate to think where Vancouver would be without Kevin Lankinen right now. To me, and it's like this is the sort of the sweet spot of the bat for goaltenders right now of his ilk. Actually, I mean, you look at the goaltenders that have signed, like your Mackenzie Blackwoods, I suppose, right around that $5 million mark. That seems to be the going rate for these guys. I like the deal. I don't think that he's going to be like a 60 game a year starter. He's a 45 to 50 for me, but you need to have insurance. Like you need to have insurance. He's distinguished himself. He showed that he can play. He'd be a great battery with Thatcher Demko. But even if Demko's injury woes continue, at least you have at least one solid goaltender back there.
Yeah, and as we talked about, if Sheloffs rises to the occasion, maybe you have an expendable part in Demko. But if he's not, then I think you're quite right.
If you're the Canucks, do you bother going into your cupboard? The Canucks have got a couple of blue chippers in Vilander and Lekramaki that both of them might be in the lineup by the end of the season here on a regular basis, depending on how things go here. But with the desperation that we've talked about, do you bother touching the couple of blue chippers that you do have?
Throw Sawyer Minio into that conversation.
Yeah, and maybe even DPD here too, who's shown so well at such a young age too.
He looks good, man.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun.
You guys are closer to it, but like I look at Vancouver, like I like this. I like them. Or the first round picks.
Well, certainly those. I think those are absolutely in play. Like they have no use for those. This administration.
I don't know that you'd completely take every tin off the shelf. Let's put it that way. I still think you have to leave a couple of tins on the shelf, but taking one off the shelf,
that's something. That's what I'm saying.
Getting back, yeah.
I know people are saying this isn't a great draft. There are still going to be very serviceable third line centers, middle six wingers, second pair defensemen available
that will play for the next administration.
You could be right there, but I think we're a little down on this draft prematurely.
But it's not so much advice as it is prediction. Like, they just will not have any use for that player. That is an asset for this administration now.
Yeah.
And their purview is to win now.
Yeah. Just as an aside, too, I've always had a hard time with, this isn't a good draft. This isn't a good draft, because we're projecting 5 years out. Mm-hmm. Like, look, if you redid last year's draft, where would Cole Hudson be? Mm-hmm. It wouldn't be in the second round. Mm-hmm. I assure you. And this has been the history.
All the Hudsons. All the Hudsons would have been taken earlier.
Exactly. Lane 2, absolutely. Mm-hmm. There's another one coming up at BU too. But I look, the draft are lottery tickets, right? Draft picks are lottery tickets. There are some that are better gambles than others. There's some that have better chance of hitting than others, but you're essentially dealing with lottery tickets. And I've always fully been of the belief you try to get yourself as many lottery tickets as possible. Yes. That's why I kind of, you always hear it from scouts, and like, they're at the rink every day and they're following a lot closer than I am. But whenever I hear, I don't think this draft is any good, I don't know. That pill goes down sideways. That's a tough swallow, because we're projecting 5 years out here. Not right now, but 5 years out.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, I'd like to have a little something different for you at the end.
Oh, yeah. What do you got? All right.
So, Elias Pettersson, 447 points, 10th all-time with the Vancouver Canucks. He and JT were in a derby for that spot before Miller was traded. Yeah. Boeser, 420 points, 13th all-time in Vancouver Canucks scoring history. Quinn Hughes, with his assist in Los Angeles, ties Ryan Kessler and Brendan Morrison for 16th. And Jeff, by the end of next year, I could see Quinn Hughes passing both Brock Boeser and Elias Pettersson, either because they're both gone or because he just bypasses Elias Pettersson in one more season. He leads their team in scoring by 20 points as a defenseman. 23 points. It's crazy.
It's fresh insanity too, and he'll be the first to say, like, I'm not at 100% here. Like, I don't know. Like, again, so much of this has to be find a way to keep this guy here. Like, you have one of the most special players in the NHL, period. Like, nobody else does it the same way that Quinn Hughes does. Like, even on that overtime winner against Los Angeles, holding onto the puck, going down the side that way, and opening it up for Connor Garland, just perfectly, just dragging the Kings player along with him and freeing that up. Like, this is, and it's just like beer hockey for him, right? Like, I was watching him make this play. Like, it's just a casual Tuesday 9:30 game at your local arena. Like, it's easy breezy. He's I know you've talked about it before. We all have. He's just such an elite, special, peerless player out there.
And they're squandering his prime, which is, I think, another reason why you're going to see them not be full on sell mode at the deadline. We're fresh out of time, buddy, but great catching up. You have a marvelous weekend, and look forward to talking to you next week.
7 days, gentlemen, 7 days.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So, Carson Price from the historic Wall Center, and we mentioned it yesterday. We have teamed up with Resurrection Spirits and created the Carson Price Gin. And they sold some bottles yesterday, popping bottles of S&PG. It's made in East Vancouver. We're using BC ingredients here. It is a gin with character, designed for those who appreciate the art of craftsmanship in every pour.
Is there anything better?
Neat, have it in a cocktail.
Well, on a sunny day like this. S&P, G, and T. Make it happen.
Use code S&P for $5 off at resurrectionspirits.ca. That's S&P for $5 off. Get it while you can, because limited edition here. Once these bottles are gone, they are gone. And shout out to everybody at Resurrection Spirits in East Vancouver. Jeff Paterson is the host of RinkWide Vancouver. Busy week. Was at it last night. And, of course, our Vancouver Canucks reporter. He joins us now. Good day.
No, might be a good day. It wasn't a good night. The least you guys could do, is leave a few of those bottles behind for us.
Yeah, we will,
guys.
Jeff.
Absolutely. RinkWide is tough these days. Trust me.
Yeah.
We need some help grinding through.
We're getting some in here next week, Jeff. There'll be one in the cabinet behind you if you're finding yourself slogging through another. Absolutely.
There have been
we got some mugs here. No one will know the difference.
There have been worse seasons for the Vancouver Canucks, God knows, in the last decade, Jeff. But I honestly feel like I have to apologize to you for your job description because I don't know that there's been less entertaining seasons. Very few. Like maybe the Jason Magna years.
How we forget Willie and Magna with the Twins. Come on, Blake.
I don't know.
Late in my second year, and this is always going to be the baseline, late in my second year, of the 3 years I was on the road, the Canucks went to Arizona and then the two Southern California teams. So same sort of road trip here. Arizona obviously is Utah now. And got shut out in 3 straight games. I traveled. I actually got on flights to go see the Canucks get shut out in 3 consecutive road games. So this is bad.
Yeah. Duly noted. Duly noted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we used to always say that about the Caps. Like you flew to Orlando to see no goals. Like it's madness. All right, Jeff. Let's start with what was some pretty harsh criticism from Rick Tocchet in the post game. Do you differentiate what he said yesterday from what he has said after previous losses this season?
Not really. I mean, it took me right back to the Boston game in mid-December where he started to talk about guys going rogue and getting away from the game plan. And it's been a couple of months, but he went back to that page of his playbook, and he's not wrong. I mean, the defending on all of those rush chances was abysmal. And look, I know you talked about it one of the shows this week where everything Rick Tocchet touched last year, Midas touch, coach of the year, right? Well, when you go 11-7, just by the nature of having 7 defensemen, you're going to get some weird combos and guys that don't play together. Like on the Cutter Gauthier goal, it's DPD, who's the least of this team's concerns, but he's on the right side playing with Quinn Hughes. Well, he's barely been in uniform with Quinn Hughes and hasn't shared the ice with the captain very much. And all of a sudden, you're asking him now to make reads on the right side as opposed to his natural left side. The Strome goal was Forbert and Myers. They haven't played much together this season. And so this is what happens when you go 11-7. You get some odd and I'm not saying that's the reason, but I'm just saying we can pin it on the players, but there's enough to go around here right now. And it's just another example, I think, of the coach sort of trying strategies that are backfiring and blowing up in his face right now.
There was fair enough, because if DPD, if Junior and Quinn are going to be out there, play Quinn on the right side, for God's sakes. Leave the youngster alone on his comfortable side.
There was a 2-on-2 where it didn't result in a goal, but both defensemen went to the same forward, and then they both realized, we're both here. Then they both left and went to the other. There were,
cue the yakety sacks.
Last night, it was a game that it should have been at least a 2-2 game. Between the goaltending, which could have been way better, and the defensive coverage, which generally has been way better, that's the Anaheim Ducks. That should have been, at worst, a 2-2 game going into overtime, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Ducks went into the night the lowest scoring team in the National Hockey League. Now, they've been better. In fact, they've been better than the Canucks since mid-December, and over the last 10 games, they've been racking up wins. But most of it's been on the back of their goaltending. Lucas Dostal has been terrific for them, and when John Gibson's been healthy, he's been good as well. So for them, it's really been about goaltending, and they haven't scored a bunch of goals, but they found an opponent last night that was willing to give them the neutral zone. They've got young talent. They've got guys that have some speed and skill, and it was on display there last night. And then the other part is that, look who scored the goals. Right, they don't have a ton of top-end talent, but Vetrano's their leading goal scorer. Strome and Terry are their top players. Those guys are all over the score sheet. I look at the Canucks side of things. All the goals came in the first period. No Quinn Hughes, no Elias Pettersson. Boeser gets a second assist there, but DeBrusk, I thought, was as quiet as he's been maybe all season long. So lots of ways to look at it, but top end of the Ducks beat top end of the Canucks without a doubt. And even though Quinn, I thought, tried second game of back-to-backs and generates 11 shots on goal, he was on the ice for 4 of the 5 Ducks goals, and that stands out just because we don't see that from Quinn Hughes very often, that his best defense is playing offense and spending a time up ice. And so for him, Strome gets to the puck before he does to set up Vatrano, and Hronek doesn't close the gap there. It was a great shot by Vatrano, but, you'd like some saves along the way. And certainly the Gauthier goal and the Strome goal as well. Wrist shots from distance that handcuff Artur Silovs. And we're sort of back to where we've been all season long with Artur Silovs now. That there was promise coming out of the Utah game, but Kevin Lankinen can't play them all. We don't know about Thatcher Demko. And so what does this do in terms of trust of the coaching staff, where the Canucks now are in a point where every point matters, every win matters? I'm not sure that there's a ton of faith in Artur Silovs after a performance like that one last night.
I said I think they should have played, and this isn't 2020 hindsight. I was thinking yesterday they should be playing Lankinen again. As well as Silovs played on the weekend, not denying that at all. They needed to guarantee that they got the 2 points, and based on the fact that he's coming off of 3 straight days of rest, playing back to back to me wasn't crazy to ask Kevin Lankinen.
Yeah, we won't know now. The Seattle game would have been 3-4 with some travel there. Yep. And we've seen earlier in the season that they have overplayed him. And I think they wanted to believe that Silovs had been playing well in Abbotsford, brought it to the NHL, looked good against Utah. We said the other night, hey, there are better teams out there than Utah, but on Sunday, that's who he faced, did the job, didn't get the victory, and now it's 1 win in 8 starts for Artur Silovs at the National Hockey League level this year. The goaltending is going to be fascinating. Now, I think they're in a point here now, Seattle, and then a couple of days off, and then days between games. I think Kevin Lankinen can probably run the next 4. Then they run into another back-to-back. Is Thatcher Demko going to be available by then? We'll find out when they get off the road trip, but they are going to have a difficult decision because the next set of back-to-backs at home to Montreal and in Calgary, if it is still about making the playoffs through all the faults and foibles of this hockey club, that game in Calgary might very well be the most important game they've got left on their schedule. And they will have a goaltending decision to make there.
Back to coaching and deployment, natural stat trick that Elias did not have an offensive zone start. Jeff, what do you make of that?
The coach has kind of thrown his hands in the air like a lot of the fan base has now. And so this is not to absolve Rick Tocchet because the Canucks are the lowest scoring team in the NHL since Christmas, lowest shot totals. It feels like just about any coach could come behind the bench and take it to that level. So I think in the big picture, Rick Tocchet has to ask himself, and it's fair to ask, why is nothing changing? But part of the answer to that is because the $11.6 million guy is basically a non-entity. And last night, Arshdeep Bains and Nils Åman were as effective as Elias Pettersson, and those guys didn't play. And that's just the truth of the matter. And so I saw Farhan put out a poll question on his own personal Twitter about how many goals will Elias Pettersson score the remainder of the season. Guys, this started from a text exchange that Farhan and I had. There's 23 games to go. I have to believe in my heart of hearts that there is a goal left in Elias Pettersson at some point this season.
Mm-hmm.
But what is your number where this becomes a realistic question where you could look yourself in the mirror and think, is he going to score again? Is it 15 games to go? Is it 10 games to go? Based on the evidence, the guy has one shot on a good night and no shots on a night like last night. He doesn't shoot the puck. Well, to put the puck in the net, you got to shoot it, essentially. There are 23 to go. Again, it's just, I can't get there. But the mere fact that I'm asking myself this now and asking you guys is just, it's wild. 1 goal in 19 games. Well, they got 23 to go. There's got to be another goal left there, doesn't there?
But it's 0-3. He's got it in bracket. He's got a
0-3 is leading his poll with 50% of the vote.
I think that's the correct
right now.
answer.
I'm voting 4. I think he gets to 15.
And it'll be in a full season, predominantly full season. He'll miss a handful of games, but it'll be a full season. It'll be in the 70s in games played, guys.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about 15
and sorry to bog you down with a bunch of numbers on a Friday, but you know me in hockey math, right? The math has become really clear, guys. They have 23 games to go. They have 65 points. 15-8 would get them to 95. This year, 95 gets them in. So if you believe the Canucks can go 15-8, then they're going to be a playoff team. If they go 14-9, that's 93 points. 13-10 is 91 points. And that is inviting Trouble and company, do they have 13 wins left in them based on?
I think 91 points does get you in this year, by the way, but 13 and 10 is not easy. Like that's not slim.
They got a lot of home games left,
which you'd like to think would mean something, but given the way they've played at home this year,
yeah. But I think that may correct a little bit. Yeah, I mean, there's some sitters there, but there are also some pretty good teams coming through.
That middle week of March,
Eastern
they play.
road trip.
There are no
middle
sitters,
2 weeks
Matt,
of March.
Let's be honest. Like Anaheim should have been a sitter. Seattle on Saturday should be a sitter, but given the
sure,
state
but
of
Jeff,
the
they got
Vancouver team,
yeah, but sure, Jeff, but they got Chicago and San Jose coming too, right? So,
but those middle 2 weeks of March, guys, they've got Utah, Calgary, and St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
So by the end of spring break,
yep,
have a pretty good idea.
Yep.
Essentially, just to drive home my point, I don't think they can afford more than 10 regulation losses. Whatever else happens in the other categories, if you want to look at it that way, if they flush 20 points, 10 regulation losses, now they're playing with fire. So just sort of try to frame it that way for the remaining 20
for sure.
games.
Maybe even 9 regulation losses. But no, you're quite right, Jeff. Pius Suter, I thought he was pretty good last night, at least early and offensively. Look, you could say he boosted his trade value, but if you're moving him, you might as well run up the white flag, given where you are at center ice. Dollywall says they are talking, looking at like $3+ million to re-sign him. Where are you on bringing Suter back or using him as a trade piece at the deadline?
I think he's a pretty useful piece. He's not flashy, we know that, but he's versatile. And it's not just center ice, it's penalty kill. He's the first guy over the boards with Teddy Bluger, and penalty kill has been one area that the Canucks really have excelled over the last couple of months when so many other parts of their game have fallen away. The penalty kill has shot right up the middle here, and he's a huge part of that and just kind of quietly goes about his business. And again, I think it speaks to his hockey IQ, read and react. Not a flashy guy, but 15 goals, nothing to sneeze at. Certainly with the remainder of the schedule, you think that he could have a shot at 20. Went awfully quiet for a 6-week run, but that kind of happens with middle six forwards. And so you trade him away, you're chasing to find the next Pius Suter. And I guess that's kind of where I am with this, that, is there a team out there that could use him for a playoff run for all the reasons that I just mentioned? Yeah, probably. I don't know what kind of return you'd get on the market, but ultimately you just find yourself back in the summer looking for another guy. I don't think Ratu is ready to step in and deliver at the level that a Pius Suter does for the Vancouver Canucks. So he's just kind of quietly one of those low-maintenance guys, coach's dream, does what the coach asks wherever he puts him. And we saw in the last couple of years, like, again, is he a perfect player to slide into a top 6? No, but he has the defensive chops that made that JT Miller and Brock Boeser combination effective and allowed, kind of covered up some of their mistakes. And so I guess I come back to this idea, like, do you win with Pius Suters? I'm not sure about that, but I just think if you trade him away, you're trying to replace him, and I don't think that they've got the options internally, and so are you basically spending the same sort of money on devil you don't know in free agency as opposed to a guy that's here and settled and has been pretty good for you for the years that he's been a Canuck?
Are you any more clear on what big moves the Vancouver Canucks can even pull off at this point? Like, nibbling around the edges, going to get a winger from another team to try to have more offense down the stretch, like, it might be a good acquisition, but it's really not going to move the needle that much. Down the middle in particular, but in the forward set, they need big changes. I mean, do you have any sense that that's going to happen this year, or is that a complete offseason to-do list thing?
Oh, I don't think anything's off the table with this group. I think it's becoming abundantly clear that it's not good enough, and even if it slides into the playoffs somehow and those other teams in the chase pack fall away, that you run into Vegas or Winnipeg in the first round, and I don't think that's going to be particularly pretty and will expose even more warts on the Vancouver Canucks. So I think in the short term and the long term, everything has to be at play here. And then the conversation comes back to doing everything you can to try to build around Quinn Hughes. But at some point, and I'm certainly not there yet, but look, Jim Rutherford mentioned it first in the article to Gary Mason. They want to keep Quinn as a lifetime Canuck, but if they're going to rip it down, then they're going to have to consider that as well. I just wonder, is there enough time to build this back up to give Quinn this indication that, yeah, things are moving in the right direction and that you're going to be able to support him and put a contending roster together? Or in 2 years' time, does he just say, thanks, it was fun, and I'm out the door, and then what? So, it's multi-layered here. Obviously, it's really short term before the trade deadline. It's into the summer and around the draft, but then there are these massive big picture issues as well, and they all pertain to how do you get to championship contender status? And it just feels like last year, with every day that goes by, last year we just have to put in the outlier pile, right? Like, it was fun while we had it, but it's feeling now like if this thing slides away and yet another year without playoff hockey in the city of Vancouver, what are we doing here? And what is the direction of this operation and organization? Because I'm not seeing it, and I'm certainly not feeling it.
Feels like the bubble playoffs. Remember, there was the bubble playoffs were kind of fun, and then scuffle for a couple more years. Now that's last year as well. Just doesn't feel like it's going to be there, but we'll see.
Let me and look. Don't think it's going to happen because I don't think Francesco is wired this way. Plus, you're on a playoff spot. Rarely do we see teams on playoff spots, at least in this evolution of their team and with the mindset that this Canucks management and ownership group has shown. Rarely do they punt from here. But, Jeff, let me run it by. Spitball with me. Cam Robinson thinks Boeser gets you a first-round pick and an A or B level prospect. Soucy, Suter, maybe a couple of seconds, second and third, something like that. Forbert, maybe a fifth. You got 4 draft picks and a prospect and $13 million to redeploy for next year. Would you be inclined to sign up for something like that?
Yeah, I'll take the conversation a little bit sideways. I think I pick up the phone and I call Buffalo and say, hey, your season's going nowhere. Are you interested in Pettersson? Is this something that we can get our heads around again? If you could tell me that the Vancouver Canucks right now could land Dylan Cozens and Bowen Byram for Elias Pettersson, I think I'd sign up for it. Get up from under the contract. I would take Dylan Cozens and hope that there's a reclamation project there. You don't need Bowen Byram with Quinn Hughes and Marcus Pettersson, and we've seen the MO of this front office. Flip Bowen Byram and get another forward. And could you turn that into replacing Elias Pettersson with Dylan Cozens and player X that you would acquire in a second deal, moving Bowen Byram? And I think that's where this front office has done some of its best work, is not just focusing on the one trade, but what can the one trade lead to? But I'm kind of at that point now where my patience has kind of run out, and my hopes that Elias Pettersson can ever flip a switch and get back to being the superstar player. Every game that goes by, I just feel like that is getting tougher and tougher to reconcile. And so, yeah, I think that would be one of my moves right now. With 7 days to go before the trade deadline, call Buffalo and say, hey, you're going nowhere. It kind of feels like we're going nowhere. Maybe we swap each other's problems and see if we can't make it work that way.
Yeah, I said to Blake earlier in this week, Byram and Cozens is looking better and better with each passing day, and Blake and I have also had the conversation this week. I think it's going to be a desperate team that solves your Elias Pettersson problem, a team with problems of its own that you may have to take on. So that's quite sensible for me. The Cascadia Derby tomorrow, Jeff, from Climate Pledge in Seattle. You'll have rink-wide coverage post-game. We thank you for this, and we'll catch up next week.
Yeah, and do we think that this Seattle game will be as eventful as the one out of the Christmas break where the Canucks had the 4-1 lead with 5 minutes to go and flushed it, and then a week later in Seattle had a 3-1 lead in the third period, let it get away. Thatcher Demko left with back spasms, and they were able to salvage a shootout victory. But there's been a lot that's gone on in the 2 games so far between these teams. Kraken are 28th. Talk about teams that are going nowhere. 28th in the NHL standings, and again, you mentioned the word sitters. It feels like this is a very gettable game for the Vancouver Canucks, but at the end of a road trip, 5 and 8 nights for a team that's floundering offensively, all bets kind of feel like they're off right now.
I promise not to use sitters with you again, Jeff. I noticed how you clapped back at me there, but
well, Blackhawks.
I reserve the right for Chicago and San Jose.
I can get there.
All right. Thank you. We have agreement.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where you turn game night into a game weekend. Book your stay at the Wall. Enjoy an exclusive Harrison Price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Mention us. Some blackout date supply based on availability.
And this segment brought to you by Ben Moss. And when you're shopping for something as important as a diamond, you want to make sure you've got knowledgeable staff that make you feel at home, comfortable with the decision. They're all about customer satisfaction at Ben Moss. 5 locations to serve you: Abbotsford, Victoria, Chilliwack, Willowbrook, and Langley, Coquitlam Center. They've got proof of concept. They've been doing this for a century. They know how to do it. Lab-grown diamonds, but mine diamonds as well. Available with payment plans to suit your needs. So go check them out at benmoss.com. Ben Moss, shine bright.
Galaxy brain idea. You stop by Ben Moss. You buy her the ring, you take her to the game next Friday, and then you stay here at the Wall to celebrate.
I'd be worried about the game bringing the mood down.
You think you propose pre or post game?
Pre. There's the promise of a great night ahead before the game.
What a night for Vancouver Whitecaps FC at BC Place. They beat Deportivo Saprissa 2-0, soundly 2-0. They punched their ticket to the CONCACAF Champions Cup round of 16. That means a home game. Wednesday. Right around the corner. Yeah. Wednesday against CF Monterrey. That's a 7:30 p.m. kickoff at BC Place. Tickets are already on sale there. Caps not looking like the same old Caps. You know, we've used the phrase Cap's gonna cap. For starters, the black, red, green, and gold Black History Month kit. Sharp. Very first time they've done this. That looked snazzy. They were on the ball. They wanted the ball. It's a big difference between new coach Jesper Sorensen and Vanni Sartini, and a clinical no-doubter against a side from the Americas. As our colleague Ben Steiner posted, never thought I'd see a day where the Whitecaps, infamously a counterattacking club, string together 17 passes in the build-up to scoring. Just perfection in match number 3 under Sorensen. He's talking about Jaden Nelson setting up Brian White for a goal beautifully.
Spectacular cross.
White adds another one off a corner. Ali Ahmed had several glorious chances in this game. Could have had 2 easy. And how often have they won convincingly, Blake, with Ryan Gauld not being the orchestrator of the goals?
Well, that's the biggest thing.
Working-class MVP plays just 25 minutes because they do have a league game Sunday that is more important against the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Him, Kubas, Veselinovic, the spine of the team mostly missing, and yet still.
We've lauded soccer for so long for having the parallel competitions, that it adds a certain je ne sais quoi spice to your given season. But now that the Whitecaps have been more competitive here in the last handful of years and been a playoff team for the most part, you also see the complication of them in that the biggest cup is the League Cup, is MLS Cup. And especially when you're a cusp team like the Whitecaps, not a fully dominant team just yet, playing in the parallel competitions can be a nagging fatigue factor in your primary goal. And so
could still be. We'll see about Sunday against Galaxy. That's the reigning MLS champ.
Completely. But they did the right thing. Jesper Sorensen, in his first year, did the right thing, ensuring that the backbone of his team did not play in this match. Ryan Gauld, Andres Kubas, and Ranko Veselinovic did not start, and in the case of Kubas, didn't even play in this game. And yet they were still dominant and still able to get a multi-goal victory. So huge bonus for them, and now they can put forth a pretty good effort, and we'll see how much healthier they are in terms of like Rios, the newcomer. Sabi's still a bit of
Ocampo.
Ocampo came off the bench. Maybe he starts.
I want to see more Ocampo.
Yeah.
Hard Joe Hall of Daily Hive says the Caps are not closing in on these 2 European targets. Glass City says standing by his account. Dominic Fitz, more on him. 9 assists, 6 goals in 18 games. He has been a driving force behind his Austrian club's side. Title push. Noted he's a set-piece specialist. He's perfect from the penalty spot, 4 for 4. He takes all the free kicks and corners for his club side. And then Bild, the German news agency, is confirming that the Caps are after Polish midfielder Łukasz Poreba.
I reached out to a German
friend.
Yes, analyst.
Is that Manuel?
No, a German analyst in the Bundesliga.
Blake Price, soccer play-by-play worldwide, baby. Contacts in Europe.
Fitz apparently a very creative player.
Mm-hmm. Looks that way on paper.
The words I got: good vision, solid fundamentals. Sometimes guilty of doing too much, but he is the man in the middle for his team. He would be one of two men in the middle. If depending on how they play Ryan Gauld, but still, you know what I mean. Gauld is the creator.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't be all on him to create all the offense. Mm-hmm. So with a dual pronged creation machine there of Fitz and Gauld, I think it would be a little less of that, perhaps.
Big week ahead for the Caps. Sunday, 2 p.m., the MLS home opener against LA Galaxy. Wednesday, we mentioned CF Monterrey, the first leg of their Champions Cup round of 16. And then next Saturday, home to CF Montreal in an all-Canadian derby. Boy, lots of CFs next week at BC Place. CF at BCP for VWFC.
Hopefully a W or two.
Seahawks making some news at the NFL Scouting Combine. Allowed today, there's a report today from Corbin Smith down in the Emerald City that the Seahawks are talking to teams about DK Metcalf. Now, John Schneider, the general manager, has previously said they intend to keep the star wide receiver. It might just be teams calling on him, but as you know, from time to time, DK's attitude, so you wonder where the locker room is on him. I suspect they could get quite a significant return there if they're moving on, but I think everybody wants them to keep DK and continue on with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who had a great step-up season for them last year. And DK on the outside does look like Tyler Lockett's going to be moving on. They interviewed Mississippi quarterback Jackson Dart, and this is a guy who is rising up some draft boards. Blake, he led the entire country in the underneath throws. He's a take what the defense gives him. He's already got that mindset. That can be hard to ingrain in a young star quarterback at the NFL level. Take a look at my boy Caleb Williams this year. He just always wanted to make the big play. No. Sometimes you just got to. Dart has that. He's got decent feet. He was coached at Ole Miss by Lane Kiffin, the former Raiders coach, who has an extensive history as an offensive mind and coordinator at a number of high-level programs. That could be quite interesting at pick number 18 to go the quarterback route. Some believe that Dart is going to challenge Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, Deion's son, as one of the top quarterbacks selected. And then the Seahawks are also letting safety Rayshon Jenkins explore a trade. He's a cut candidate. He lost the starting job to Kobe Bryant last season. Do you know the Seahawks have a DB named Kobe Bryant, and there is a DB in this year's draft named Kobe Bryant as well?
I guess for some, if you had the last name Bryant.
If you had the last name Bryant.
It was too tempting.
Now, they spell it differently. One spells it C-O-B-Y. Another spells it C-O-B-E-E.
Yes.
No one has gone K-O-B-E, or at least not that I have seen, but I'm sure they're out there as well. Boy, really sad note here from the CFL alumni. Former BC line Gerald Bayless has passed away at age 62. He's a former league most outstanding defensive player, 4-time All-Star, Grey Cup champion, a superb pass rusher in his day, both off the edge and inside. He spent the 91 season with the Lions. He was mostly known as an Argo, but here's the really sad part. If you go to his Wikipedia page, they say he died December 30th. As 3 Down Nation notes, the first report of his death surfaced in Mississippi Today on January 9th, which said that he had died recently. So the dates may line up there. He's a Jackson, Mississippi native. He was supposed to be inducted to the Canadian Football Hall of Fame in 2020, but the Regina Leader-Post reported the Riders could not locate him. He spent his final couple years in Saskatchewan. They were unable to locate him, and so his induction was postponed. Now he's expected to be inducted in the 25 or 26 class posthumously. You know, it doesn't end well for some football players, whether it's CTE, and we have learned so much about that, or just difficulty adjusting to life off the gridiron. It's a little different than other sports, right? Like, you don't go play tackle football in the park on a Sunday. Other athletes can keep on playing their sport, even if it's not at the same level. Football players, it ends abruptly and cold turkey. So.
And if you make millions and millions, you stand a slightly better chance. Now, there are many that have frittered away their millions, of course, but it's particularly difficult for a CFL veteran who didn't make those millions, doesn't have the resources to take care of their health maybe to the same degree, particularly if they do live in the States.
Right.
And
especially,
it's a sad story.
Uncovered in the States, and nobody, especially of that era, was retiring on CFL. Well, Rocket Ishmael was retiring.
Yes, maybe.
Do you remember his press conference when he was introduced by the Argos on NFL draft day? And his mom was like, I said, son, 21 million? Like, what are we waiting for? We are getting on the plane. We are getting on that gravy train. One of the most honest press conferences I've ever seen in my life. Do you care how the Canucks win? Our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question from Thursday. Yes or no? What did the people say?
They said yes.
No, Blake, they said no. I knew he would get this one wrong because he's yes. And I know he wanted you all to vote with him, but you didn't. Diane, a win is a win. I care more about how they lose. Good honesty, Diane. If you're going to lose, at least be entertaining or be close. Rob, the siding guy, not when they're fighting for the last playoff spot. If they were in the Oilers' position, I could see arguing it. But right now, just do what you need to do to win. Gord, no. Although, need to add, if they win a lot and with consistency control, extreme example, if the Canucks won a cup by bringing back modern-day dead puck hockey, ruining it for everyone else, I don't care. And then Chris, and we saw
They're
a lot.
not that good at it.
We saw a lot of this. I'll pick Chris's here. He says, you should, because it's indicative of how sustainable a run is. When it comes to the playoffs, it only matters that you win. But in the regular season, you need to see a team that's dominating puck possession and earning those.
If they were getting 18 shots a game, winning 2-1, and were the second seed in their division, I would not be asking you this question, people. They're not that good at doing this crap.
Errors and omissions from yesterday's program corrected on the spot, but Carson Soucy, not a UFA, has term left, but the Canucks are shopping him. And we said they're expecting a crowd of 15,000 at BC Place for the Whitecaps. Turned out to be a little bit more than 14. Are expecting 20-plus for Sunday in the MLS home opener against the Galaxy. Did you come across the lineup snafu we were talking about yesterday, filling out the lineup card wrong? Or
No.
okay.
Oh, no, I didn't.
A lingering omission then.
Speaking of lineup snafu, though, it wasn't a snafu intentional. What did you make of Kendall Waston, striker? He's the striker for Deportivo Saprissa.
I love it in terms of reimagination, repackaging that skill set. You know, maybe at his age, he no longer has the lateral mobility, agility, flexibility, everything that he was going to need to play center back.
He's a concrete head he's a big backboard.
And he had a bit of a knack for the net, Blake, when he was here. Like, for a center back, he scored some goals. He scored a goal at the World Cup.
They just use him as a backboard. All the crosses go in looking for that head, and he flicks them all on. I was
a little disappointed the way it ended because he brought a lot of joy and spirit. We had him on the show.
Oh, yeah.
I quite liked him.
That smile is
$1 million
infectious.
Smile. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's Insta, X, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time. And, of course, support the community sponsors like Resurrection Spirits and the S&P Gin.
Go get it.
And keep it local.